Welcome back. I am really excited to bring you today's episode, which is all about how to respond with love to toxic communication and negativity. I'm going to start off by reading the blog post that's been on here before, and then Eric and I are going to talk a little bit about our personal experience when we've actually tried this out in real life, as well as share a reader's experience using it in her workplace. So without further ado, let's hop into the blog post first. About a year ago, I wrote an article on harmful communication tactics to stop using. In the post, I talk about common toxic communication styles like assuming feelings and shifting blame and how you can replace them from your everyday language. As I reread the post, I realized that my thoughts about toxic communication have grown and I had more to say on the topic. First, that toxic communication patterns apply to how we speak to ourselves as well. Oftentimes, especially as women, our internal dialogue can actually be the biggest negative Nancy we come in contact with each day. Don't get me wrong, men have negative internal dialogues too, but as women, we tend to feel a global responsibility for everyone and everything around us. People-pleasing and keeping the peace are often the ultimate guide when it comes to our interaction with ourselves and others. In order to keep the peace, what do most of us do? We rationalize our feelings, shift blame onto others or onto ourselves, and allow our ego to deny and justify our reality. But all of that just keeps us stuck. When we allow ourselves to use any of the harmful communication patterns in our internal dialogue, it keeps us feeling less than, not good enough, and trapped in the perpetuating cycle of self-doubt or self-hate. And how does all of this self-loathing manifest? Typically, we turn that anger inward, becoming depressed and anxious. Mental health is one of the biggest women's health issues that simply isn't talked about enough. Emotional stress can also lead to high blood pressure and greater chances of becoming ill and abusing substances. Instead, though, imagine if you could own your choices, behaviors, and mistakes. How would that feel? Liberating! Why? Because we don't have to hide. We can move into the light, let go of guilt and shame, take ownership of our lives, and feel love for who we truly are. In doing this, we can stop harming ourselves and the people around us. When we honor and respect what we tell ourselves, we honor and respect everyone we come in contact with. So, how to respond to harmful communication tactics with love? Keep in mind, this is how you can respond when certain things come up with other people, but also when they come up within ourselves. When you come in contact with anything that feels toxic or negative, simply respond with love. So when someone comes up to you, or when you say to yourself, anything negative or hurtful, respond simply by saying, I love the opposite of what is happening about you. So for instance, say someone or you start shifting blame. Can you believe that so-and-so didn't do that? He totally screwed me over. Before the person or your mind can keep feeding into this story of blame, shame, and guilt, pause and respond with, I love how you can see everyone's role in a situation, including your own, and know exactly how to move forward. All of a sudden, instead of adding to the problem, we are moving towards a solution rooted in love and light. You see, when we're doing something negative, it means we have the capacity for the positive. If we notice anger is coming up, it means we have the ability to give humor, compassion, and healing. So here are a few more examples of how to respond with love based on some of the most common toxic communication habits I've seen. Number 1 would be assuming feelings. So next time you hear, you need to relax, try responding with, I love how you can be so serene like a tranquil lake. Or, I love how you ask for clarity about others' feelings and what's truly going on. Number 2, shifting blame. Next time you hear, well, what do you want me to say? It wasn't my fault. I couldn't be there. I had to do this other thing. Spread love with your response by saying, I love when you take ownership for your time and communicate your needs with others. Number 3, denial or playing dumb. Next time you hear, I have no idea what you're talking about. That never happened. I didn't do that. Simply respond by saying, I love how you can take responsibility for your actions and own your mistakes. It's a really beautiful quality of yours. Or, I love how even when we have different perspectives of what happened, we can support each other. At this point, you might be thinking to yourself, this sounds lovely, Rachel, but also sarcastic AF. What do I do if someone gets more angry at me for saying this stuff? I'm so glad you asked. First, you'll notice as you're doing this that you'll start to actually mean what you're saying. Even if you just start out saying it as a silly exercise, as the words leave your mouth, notice how a shift starts to happen within you. You'll actually start to see the love and beauty in the situation. All of a sudden, what started out as a silly experiment is coming from a place of unconditional love. You're gonna end up saying all of this stuff with integrity because it's all true. Like I said, whenever somebody is doing the negative, they have the capacity for the positive, and you're just doing this exercise to manifest that in them. So when you're actually coming from a place of unconditional love, the other person will ultimately feel it. Maybe not right away, maybe they'll think it's an act, maybe they'll even get angrier. But when you come from a place of unconditional love, whatever they throw at you next will simply be from that same place of love. Basically, just keep responding even if they get mad from a place of love. If you're coming from a place of unconditional love, remember that you're now helping the person manifest this quality in themselves. By responding with love, you've changed the course of your relationship for the better. You've given them a gift instead of feeding into their toxicity and reminded them of what they are capable of. And at this point, if you find yourself thinking, okay, great, but what if I don't feel unconditional love towards the person? You're gonna have to ask yourself why in that situation. Typically, in my experience, if I struggle with finding love for a person, it's because something inside of them is a quality inside of myself I haven't fully embraced yet. For example, if you've been a reader of my blog for a long time, you know that my mom and I have had a strained relationship for the better part of my 20s. Our conversations would typically go like this. My mom would say, Rachel, you beat a dead horse. You can't leave things in the past. You just think I'm a terrible mother. And I would typically respond with, Mother, you won't acknowledge any of my feelings or the things that have happened. You won't forgive me or yourself, and you basically just hate me. But here's the reality. I actually admired my mom's quality of leaving things in the past. As a little girl, I struggled to understand emotions. I watched people hide them, bury them, and cover them up. So I ran towards them. I sat in them, all in an attempt to try to understand them. I wouldn't let them go. I wouldn't stop playing with them, even when they were super heavy and making me depressed. You see, emotions are like a wave. They have a peak, they crash, and then they recede. I wasn't allowing them to recede. My mom was 100% right that I beat a dead horse and couldn't leave things in the past alone. I was stuck in the past, and I admired that she could look at a situation and say, well, this happened, let's go, and move on. The truth was that I hated myself and just wanted her to acknowledge things happened for external validation, that she truly saw me and accepted me. But even if she had done that, it wouldn't have helped me since I didn't love myself at that point. I kept looking to her to give me the acceptance and answers when they were within me all along. The big takeaway here is even if you don't have unconditional love for someone, it's because you haven't embraced that part of yourself yet. We're all connected, loving mirrors of one another. If someone's agitating you, run towards them and offer them love because it means you'll be offering the gift of love to yourself. Since I realized how I've processed my emotions against my personal grain, and we all have a different capability when it comes to processing emotions. So what's working for one person might not necessarily work for you. I've been able to let things go. I've been able to embrace myself in a totally new and beautiful way because I'm not getting mixed into other people's drama. And so with that, I want to bring Eric back in and chat a little bit about our real life experience using the this whole responding with love strategy, as well as share a reader's experience with it. All right. So, Eric, when you first heard about this concept of responding with love, what was your internal reaction?
That anyone who receives that love will take it as being condescending.
I totally relate. And you actually did this with one of your college roommates who you guys have a very sarcastic relationship, I'd say.
Oh, very.
So, how did that go? Well, first, why did you choose to do this on him?
He had just launched a new company, and he invited me to be a part of the Facebook group. Well, he didn't invite me. He just added me to be part of the Facebook group, which is one of these groups that has a lot of activity on it. So I just messaged him and said, "You're welcome." Mm-hmm. You know, sarcastically.
Yeah, gotcha.
Kind of relationship.
Thanks for all the notifications.
Yeah, exactly. So his response was just, "Shut up." To which I responded, "I love how sweet you are to me." And he said, "I'm nicer to you than any other person on earth." I said, "I know, and I love that." And he said, "OMG, I was kidding. I love you deeply." To which I responded, "You're beautiful."
Beautiful.
Yes.
And so I think that's like the really cool thing. I wanted you to kind of share that example with people because I know one of my readers or a few of my readers said like they wanted to try it, but they were nervous because a lot of people are going to think it's sarcastic. And so that example is so great in my opinion because you guys are already sarcastic all the time to each other. And then you're doing something that most people are probably going to think is condescending. But immediately, like literally just 2 times of reinforcing responding with love, you got him to totally change his tune and pull back on his words.
Well, and I think that you bring up a really good point, which is that reinforcement, right? And I think on the first pass, it's going to be received with condescension as it was with him, right? They're going to get defensive. What do you mean? I'm the nicest person. I know, and I love that about you, right? And so doing that, whether it's with a friend or a boss or whatever, you know, one of the things that we learned going into this was, you know, manifesting that quality that you want out of them. So if they receive it condescendingly, that reinforcement just manifests it more in them, and they then want to aspire to be the way that you're saying you see them as.
Exactly. You basically get to create the relationship into any way that you want it to be. So I love that too. One of my readers said, "I really want to apply this to my life, and I'm particularly thinking about the workplace. Going off of that, do you have any additional tips if it's related to people at work and anything that you think is a definite don't?" Thanks, Rachel.
So, yeah, where my mind instinctively goes is being aware of gender communication, especially in this day and age.
What do you mean?
How you present something and what you're saying to make sure that you're being very clear with the messaging that you want them to receive. So if it's a man talking to a woman and saying, "I love how you are X," or even if it's a female talking to a man, that nothing you say can be misinterpreted in any way.
Do you have like an example? Because I kind of don't agree with you here. Because my initial response to her was, I think the workplace is a fantastic place to do this, and I really don't see any don'ts. So like, where's your head at here?
Maybe it's just being mindful of all this Me Too stuff, and that's for men and females.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't go up to somebody and say, "Hey, I love your cleavage hanging out of your shirt that day." Like, what are you trying to manifest in that relationship? No, like. Yeah, obviously that's going to be misinterpreted. There's no other way to misinterpret that.
Yeah, well, okay. So I work in a relatively toxic place.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I could even see somebody walking up to somebody in my office and saying, "I love how sexy you choose to dress." Right? Because, and that for them would be trying to manifest them dressing nicer versus You know?
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So, like, I know it's an extreme example.
No, I get it. But if somebody's showing up to work dressed like a slob and you're trying to get them to dress nicer, but to your point, shame on whoever would use the word sexy versus I love how you really take care of yourself. So, like, I agree with your point about being mindful of the words you're choosing, but there's really no wrong. I mean, be mindful of the words you're choosing. Yeah.
Be mindful of the word. That should be the summary of this exchange. Be mindful of the words that you're choosing. But to your point, yeah, I totally agree. The workplace is an amazing environment to use this practice in because, you know, other than your significant other, you know, those are the people that you spend the most time with, right? And those are the people that have the greatest impact on your day-to-day well-being and happiness. So if you should be manifesting positive vibes anywhere, it is certainly in the workplace, which brings out a lot of darkness in people.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of insecurities. There's a lot of toxicity, I think, in no matter what industry you're in. There's just a lot. And we'll probably have to do an entirely different episode on workplace dynamics. But as a starting point, this is a fantastic resource to bring with you into your office or into your life in general. That same reader who originally asked the question, she actually messaged me with an update the following week that the tips and the strategy actually worked so darn quick and actually got a positive response. Thanks for that. So be sure to send us your stories of what happens, how you guys are implementing this in your life. And with that,
and I just have to put this out there because I think this is really important. And I think something that should be taken away when I gave the exchange between me and my college roommate, which is men do not feel vulnerable about using words like I love how. Right? Yeah. You know, I mean, it's an important thing to tap into. And if you're a man saying it to another man, be prepared that approaching somebody with that kind of vulnerable speech will probably make them even more insecure. And that's okay. Remember, that's on them.
Definitely. And I love that. And I also think, you know what? I actually don't want to wrap this up that quickly because as you say that whole thing about men, it reminded me of a situation I was in middle school. And I used to throw love around like crazy. Somebody held a door open for me. I love you. Somebody did my homework for me. I love you. Somebody gave me a ride. I love you. And that also resulted in me actually getting really badly bullied because one of the boys that I had said that to ended up developing feelings. And one of his girlfriends ended up leaving threatening messages on my phone that she wanted to beat me up and how could you be so careless and da-da-da-da-da. And so I do think that it's also worth mentioning for women where I know a lot of the time I just worked with a client where one of her male clients caught feelings for her and she terminated the relationship, that it is something that does come up a lot if you're freely giving love, if you're showing this type of warmth, that it can be scary in the sense that, well, what do I do if somebody ends up liking me? And for that, I'll just really say is like, don't worry about that. Anytime that somebody is going to come back at you that they have feelings for you or, you know, you shouldn't express yourself in that way, that's really their own stuff. And really it's just because you're usually the first person that's showing them a loving mirror of all that's possible for them and their self-worth and their self-esteem and what they're truly capable of. So of course they're going to glom onto that. You know, you set your boundaries, say, I'm really not interested in you like that, but don't stop putting that high vibe energy out into the world because you're afraid of that. Just be aware that like people aren't used to being lifted up in this way, and that can be an interesting experience initially for a lot of people. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there too. Respect. All right. So with that, no joking this time, we are actually out. As always, you guys can send us any questions that you'd like answered on the podcast or blog at rachel@theconfusedmillennial.com. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at theconfusedmillennial.com. And we will talk to you guys next time.